Hi, everybody. It's me, Hugh, the ghost of that channel, and I'm just here. We got a very special show for you. I'm going to bring in our special guest host here, Jason, Cosmic Truth Authority. Jason, great to see you. I'm going to turn this over to you because I know we got something special, and and you can tell people what it's all about.
And thank you so much, Hugh, for letting me interview an amazing man, a man named Michael Shratt, who is, I consider him a good friend, even though we've never met yet, but hopefully in the future we will. And who is Michael Shratt? Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Michael is an aerospace, aircraft, military historian, lecturer. He's an author of this fabulous book. I highly recommend everybody go out and purchase this amazing book, Dark Files. And yes, he's an amazing hardcore UFO researcher. I really respect Michael's work, and I think a lot of you, if you listen to what he has to say and his PowerPoint presentation tonight, I think you'll feel the same way. Michael, I think you shine a light full of humanity, and we really appreciate you trying to provide truth and transparency, as you've done over the years, with your extolling efforts and public dedication in fighting to get more truth on the UFO file and these important subjects. Because I believe, I think you would agree, Michael, the UFO file is one of the most important subjects of our time. And right. It's great to see you, and take it away, Michael.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
I can't hear you, Mike. What's that? Okay, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
You good? You good?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we're good now. I can hear you. Roger that.
So thank you again, Jason. I really appreciate it. We've been talking for quite some time, so I'm glad we got a chance to finally get together on a meeting here. And we have a lot of information to present. I want to do kind of a deep dive into the crash retrieval cases. I'm going to give you the sources of where I got the information. I'm going to give you the page number of where I got the information. I'm going to give you the specific information on the bodies, the craft, the debris, where these physical evidence pieces were actually sent, because all roads originally appeared to converge on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So why don't we go ahead now? Hopefully, when I go back to the PowerPoint here, this should show up. So let's see. Sure. Are you seeing the whole thing full screen?
I sure am, Michael.
Okay, good. Excellent. All right. So why don't we begin here? This is Retrievals of the Third Kind, Cosmic Crashes, Corpses, and Cover-Ups. And we'll begin with this slide. I always like to begin here because UFO crash retrievals, the ultimate holy grail of UFO research. And the reason why I'm calling it the holy grail is because when it comes to the crash retrievals, they contain the three primary elements. They contain the debris, the bodies, and the craft. And this is what we're going to need to bring together as a united coalition, put this physical evidence into the hands of the scientific community, and that's what's going to move this field forward. Anything short of that, and we're going to be spinning our wheels for the next 75 years. That's what we're dealing with here. That's how critical these crash retrieval cases are here. And we'll move on. Go ahead.
Well, just if I may interject, Michael, just to your point, as you know, just to tell the audience, we've already been spinning our wheel, especially you guys as taxpayers out there. We've been spinning our wheel for, as you know, over 65 years. Sure. on the real technology, and we deserve truth and transparency. And again, I appreciate you digging on the black projects, and you've developed amazing contacts with defense contractors. Maybe we can get into that later. Take it away, sir.
Okay, no problem. So a couple of quick announcements. We'll run through this sort of quickly here. The content of each case highlighted in this presentation has remained intact per the description of the original source. 2, the identity of first-hand sources will be protected per Leonard Stringfield's original agreement with his military contacts. Number 3, the visual aids used in this presentation are computer-generated forensic composite illustrations and sketches which have originated from the specific details provided by Leonard's sources. Sources for the material covered in this presentation include the following. So here's where I got the information. 3-star U.S. Air Force generals, U.S. Air Force fighter pilots, astronauts, commercial pilots, air traffic controllers, neurosurgeons, pathologists, theoretical physicists, and mathematicians, U.S. Army officers, U.S. Navy officers, military police, high-level Pentagon officials, top military brass, scientists and engineers who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other government facilities. So we're talking about first-hand military witnesses who have, absolutely dealt with the bodies, the craft, the debris, the pathologist reports, the autopsies. These are the kind of credible people that you want on your team presenting this information here. A couple of quick quotes before we begin. Number one, UFO crash retrievals can't be real because if they were, I would have read about it in the local newspaper. That's like the general public. Number two, there are not now, nor ever have been, any extraterrestrial visitors or equipment on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is their own press release. That's what they're saying in their own documents. And so I'm going to come back and say, we'll see about that. I want to introduce you to the man of the hour here. This is Leonard Stringfield, and he is the gentleman who actually coined the term UFO crash retrieval. It all revolves around this gentleman right here. In my professional assessment, this gentleman got closer than anyone, closer than me, closer than basically anyone, because he dealt with the firsthand witnesses who held the bodies, who retrieved the craft, who were on these blue beret teams that loaded these things onto 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboys and shipped them to Eglin Air Force Base, shipped them to MacDill Air Force Base, also Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He talked to these firsthand witnesses and got their testimony. That's why he's such a key player in this whole account here. Quick biography report here on Leonard. Born in 1920, he grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. By the time he graduated from high school in 1939, he had already memorized the entire dictionary, the kind of guy you want on your team, right? He joined the military as soon as he heard about the attacks on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. After the war, he was employed by a chemical company in Ohio and retired after 30 years. He wrote 2 books, one in 1957, Saucer Post 3-0, and one back in 1977 called Situation Red, the UFO Siege. So now the next bullet item is what we want to drill down on here. His lecture on UFO crash retrievals at the 1978 MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, caused an international sensation because, very simple to explain, in 1978, this whole concept of crash retrievals actually taking place, where the military took possession of these, they actually hid the bodies away in underground bunkers, and this whole thing was a new concept. He actually coined the term UFO crash retrieval, and Roswell was just beginning to come on the story at this time. So you can see how people were apprehensive, and then you mix that into the fact that he was not able to release the identities of his firsthand witnesses because he wanted to protect their identities, but he was allowed to tell the story. And so there was some frustration back in July 1978 when he actually gave this Retrievals of the Third Kind lecture to the MUFON Symposium. So there was some pushback. I want to make that clear up front. Now, he passed away in 1994. So in a nutshell, that's Leonard Stringfield. Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. Author continues quest for truth about UFOs. And it says here, quote, "What I've collected has staggering implications for mankind. This would be the biggest thing since Christ, really." Yeah, it would be. It would be. If the stories and accounts and firsthand testimony from Leonard's witnesses pan out to be true, and we have every reason to believe that they are, then we are talking about the biggest story here. We really are. And here's the quick point here. This is the book where I'm getting this information, UFO Crash Retrievals by Leonard Stringfield, 1978 to 1994. There were a number of status reports that Leonard had written between that time frame. All of those status reports were put together in one bound volume. You can get it on Amazon. It's like $90. It is some hardcore reading because it talks about where these craft were sent, the military people involved in this, how many bodies were retrieved. It talks about the interior of these craft. So if you really want to get a very sophisticated and detailed analysis of crash retrievals and where I'm getting the information for this PowerPoint, it's from this book right here. All right, now let's go to Vegas really quickly here, Jason. Let's go to Vegas. And
Been there. I've been there once. I'll go with you one day too. All right.
Let's suppose we go to any one of the casinos, right? And we go to this roulette wheel, and this roulette wheel has 120 spaces on it, and we put a bet on 119 of them. What's going to happen, Jason? You tell me.
We're going to win.
We're going to win. You're darn right we're going to win. And not only are we going to win, we're going to win like literally every single time. So what that means is all we need is one of these cases out of the 119 to be correct. And if it's true, then the whole concept of non-crash retrievals completely falls apart. All we need is one. So the odds are on our favor. That's why I put this in here. Odds are on our favor. I want to give credit to Rudy Gardea, my good friend. He did the sketches for this particular presentation. All right, so let's begin here. This is a crash retrieval operation that took place in 1942 at a base north of Georgia. Even Leonard didn't know exactly where this was, but this was at an Army facility north of Georgia, 1942. This is 5 years before Roswell. So if you put this together, we've got Cape Girardeau crash retrieval. That's in Missouri. That was in 1941. And then we had Battle Los Angeles. That was in 1942 time frame, where we had two more retrieved, 42, 43. We've got this case here. There's another. So already before Roswell, we're already talking about 4 retrievals. So the source of this is page 319 from the book I just mentioned. This craft was 15 feet in diameter, 10 feet high. There was a series of hieroglyphic type markings written along the bottom section of the craft itself. It had a hull breach on the side of it because when it came down, it hit the ledge of the awning of the building and tore open a hull breach on the side of the craft. There was a wraparound window on the forward section of the craft, and this whole thing was divided into 3 different levels. There were at least 4 bodies taken alive, and they later died. Now I want to start up at the top level. So if you went into this craft and you went into the top level, it had this control panel that had displays and switches and buttons on it. Below that, there was the mid deck that had a hole punched in the center of it so that you could walk around. Because if you look at the math here, if the beams are 5 feet tall and this thing is divided into 3 segments, you need to have this center console kind of like broken away so that you can walk around in here. Now, in back of this wraparound window that you see in this drawing here, there was what looked like 4 bar stools, and they were directly in back of this wraparound window. The 3rd level at the very bottom had an entryway hatch. And so in a nutshell, that's what this case was. Now, these beings were about 5 feet tall. They were 90 pounds. They had oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, milky white skin. So now what I want to do is I want to blow this bottom portion up so that you can see this writing here. And this is something that you see on the exterior of some of these craft, and then also on the interior where you have this pastel or purple lettering written on the inside wall of these craft. That pops up again and again. Now, next one, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. This is 1946. So we're still prior to Roswell here.
And prior to Aztec as well, right, Michael?
Prior to Aztec. Aztec was 1948. Yes, correct. Yep. Now, he was a private in records management. That's who our source is here. This is page 59 of Space, the Final Frontier by Clark McClellan. And I want to mention that in 1946, it was still known as Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. It was not Wright-Patterson Air Force Base until October 1947. So this is the cover of the book where we got this information. And in this book, we've got a sketch from the primary eyewitness. And he describes a dish-shaped craft that was 15 feet in diameter, 7 feet tall. It had an 18-inch flat section wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. There was what looked like rectangular windows, transparent windows where you could look inside this thing. There was a central column at the dead center core or bottom section of the center interior of the craft that ran from the bottom section all the way up to the top. There were no seams, there were no rivets, there were no hex head bolts, there were no socket head cap screws, no weld seams whatsoever. This thing came in on a railroad car from Arkansas back in 1946. That's how it got there. So we took all the information together, and I put together the SolidWorks AutoCAD drawing. And if you look over here on one of these windows, I've got a red dot. What they were doing is they were taking a electric drill with a diamond tip drill bit, and they were trying to breach the hull of not only the craft itself, but these windows, and they couldn't do it. They could not do it. Now, if you look at the upper right hand, I peeled back the skin that shows you the interior column here that ran from the bottom of the center all the way up to the top. Now, off to the left, just as reviewed, no rivets, no welds, no seams, no hatches whatsoever. This thing was like antiseptically sterile and built up on an atomic level, like they took atoms and stacked them together like a 3D printer. That's what this thing looked like. All right, so now let's go to the color rendering here. This gives you an idea of what this thing looked like. And again, we've peeled back the skin here. This is by my friend Joseph Rake, who's helped me. Now we'll go to my first pass on what this thing looked like. And then this is Rudy's drawing. So you can see the records management. In the foreground, they had a tool chest with a electric drill and a diamond tip drill bit. And when you look at these cases, I've got at least 3 cases now where white lab coat technicians that work at these different military installations are desperately trying to breach the hull of these craft by any means. Diamond tip drill bits, acetylene torches, lasers. The final option that they've used, which I understand is somewhat successful, is they have a complete gigantic vat of liquid nitrogen, and they drop the whole thing into liquid nitrogen. They super chill it to almost absolute zero, and then they shock it and they crack it. That's perhaps one way they get into these crafts. So we put all the information together from the primary eyewitness. We put the sketch together and all the information, and we came up with this full color rendering. So like if you were there, this might be what it would have looked like if you were actually there back in 1946 at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio.
It's amazing.
Prior to Roswell. Okay, next one, 1946. Again, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. This is a 6-year-old boy. His name is Tex Martin. This is Crash Retrievals, page 242 to page 243. He had gone with his father, who was an electrical engineer who was working at Wright Field at the time. Again, this is 1946. And he brought his son to the base. I believe it was hangar complex number, this one right here, the far one, which is the eBay. And there's an adjoining cafeteria to this location. And this gentleman, there was a, let's call him a janitor. And he was talking to this 6-year-old boy, and he asked him if he'd like to have a soda. And he asked his father, and he said, this janitor wants to buy me a soda. And he said, is it okay? And he said, yes, it's okay. So he went back to the janitor. The janitor bought him this soda. And as he's handing this soda to the 6-year-old boy, someone from inside the main hangar opens up this door into the adjoining cafeteria. And this 6-year-old boy peeks in, and he looks inside the hangar. Here he is now looking inside the hangar. And here's the first rough pass drawing by Rudy. What he sees is a dish-shaped craft on tripod landing gear. He sees 2 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboys with tarp debris on the back of the trailers. And he sees at least 3 deceased ET bodies lying on the concrete floor of the hangar. So let's do our second pass. If you look in the background, you can see this little boy looking through. This is kind of a rough layout sketch. And then let's go to the final rendering here. Now, this thing was 20 feet in diameter. It had 2 raised surfaces wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft. You can see the tripod landing gear. You can see these stretchers with these ET bodies. Again, about 3.5 feet tall, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. In the background, you can see him with the door open looking in. So if we took all this information from the primary eyewitness, using this as a guide, let's try to go to a full color rendering, Jason. And now we made it to here. Full color rendering of the best possible illustration we could put together that gives you an indication of what this might have been. Yep, if we were there back in 1946. Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Okay, next one, January 1947. We're still not even at Roswell. We're 5 in now, and we're still not even at Roswell. So this took place west of Globe, Arizona. This is January 1947. Primary eyewitness was in the Navy during World War II. And this is page 93, case A10. And this is in the vicinity of the Superstition Mountain Range. That's what we're talking about here. So we've got the primary eyewitness is driving with another military personnel. They're in a Jeep. It's still light out, and they're going down this dirt road. And off to the left, they see something incredible. What they ended up seeing is a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that had augured into the soil. It was tipped up at about a 45-degree angle. It had what looked like indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference. There was a medium-sized dome on the top. There were 2 ridges wrapped around the outer circumference. Now, they were challenged by 2 MPs with carbides. This thing was 30 feet in diameter, 18 feet tall. But not before they got a good look at this. They were only about 200 feet away from this entire retrieval operation. Now, it had not gotten to full force yet because there were just a couple of people there. There was a 6x troop transport, but it was not a full-blown retrieval just yet. This is in the very, very, very early stages of the retrieval operation. So they were at the right place at the right time and caught this whole scene. Now, we took the information together from the primary eyewitness within the Stringfield book. We tied that together with the sketch here from Rudy, and we've gone to the Joel Christopher Payne full color illustration, and this is what we came up with, just to give you an idea of what this may have looked like if we were there at this particular retrieval operation. And, we're still prior to Roswell. Now we'll go on to the next one here. Now we're finally getting into the Roswell timeline here. White Sands Missile Range, July 4th, 1947. Primary source is a technical sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force, and this is page 196 within the crash retrieval book. Now, keep in mind, what I've got here is the map of White Sands Missile Range, and you can see the boundary here of the facility. And this is at night, and what I want to make an interesting point is when this thing came down, and here's Rudy's drawing, it was excruciatingly well lit. I mean, they had light-alls here. They had searchlights trained on this thing. This thing was about 100 to 150 feet in diameter, came in at an angle, and at White Sands, the sand is so white, it's powdery like flour. And they got this, they had people with still cameras around this craft. They had people in rubber suits that were walking up on the rim of this toward the central dome. And they also had people with motion picture film reel cameras documenting this entire retrieval operation on this 150-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. So let's take this sketch and let's see if we can go to the scene and bring this to full color. And here's what we came up with. So when you hear these people in Washington, D.C. during these mini hearings and different things where we have a one-day conference, we've got senators and congressmen, and they say that they don't have any information, there is some truth to that because they might not necessarily have the correct security clearance and access to get to this information. We know that they've got photographs, right? We know they've got the photographs. We know they've got the motion picture film reel. So why can't the senators and congressmen get to this? If it's hidden in a vault at the underground Pentagon area, why can't they get to it? Because number one, they don't have a need to know, and number two, they don't have a high enough security clearance. So in effect, as hard as it is to accept, it looks like they may be telling the truth. That's how deep black and out of control this has all gotten. And we're looking at something that's 75, we're 80 years into this.
And excuse me, as you know, Michael, even regular military, as you've said before, yes, a lot of them have no idea what's going. They may suspect what's going on, but they're not read into these programs either, as you know.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So if we don't make a management decision and figure out a way to get to these facilities, and you know for a fact that what they do is they operate on the principle of no single point failure. They're not going to take all their 8x10 black and white glossy photographs of these retrieval operations and put it in one place, because if it burns down, they've lost the crown jewels. They have to spread these assets around the country. So you've got Langley, you've got CIA headquarters, you've got MacDill Air Force Base, you've got Eglin Air Force Base, you've got Edwards North Base Complex. They absolutely are spreading these assets around the country, no doubt about it. Okay, next one, 1947. This was seen in a warehouse at Berkeley. Primary eyewitness, Albert Bruce Collins. He's no longer with us. He was a metallurgical engineer. Page 197 from the book. So if you want to get more detailed information, it's on page 197, UFO crash retrievals. He was at the right place at the right time. And this, we've got a photo of Berkeley here. And I'm going to move to the next slide here. When this 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy backs in, he's kind of this white lab coat technician. He had a kind of a clipboard, and he sees this 18-wheeler backing in. And what he sees is this 30-foot long egg-shaped craft. It was about 15 feet tall. It literally looked like a cracked egg. There was a yoke inside. It was about 3 feet in diameter. And if we start to the left of this cracked section, you can see there was a composite panel. And then wrapped around the outer circumference of this 3-foot diameter interior yoke, there was another composite panel that form, fit, and function around this interior yoke section. Now, there was a flat section that wrapped around the craft itself. And then if you look on the lower right-hand corner of the egg, there was looked like shrapnel coming out. So there might have been an interior implosion of some kind. This might have been the craft itself, or it might have been the interior propulsion system of something much larger. So if this thing is already 30 feet across, what could this be part of is the real question here. Now, we took the information together from the primary source, the technical information within the one-page data source on the particular case, and we came up with this full-color rendering. Gives you an idea what this looks like. So if you look at the bottom right-hand part of the craft, you can definitely see the shrapnel. It looks like there's their interior implosion. We've got the composite panel here, and then we've got this panel that follows the contour of this interior egg yolk here that was about 3 feet in diameter, bringing it to Berkeley University, 1947. Okay, next one. Carrot Patch, south of Salinas, California, July, August 1947. This was seen by two 19-year-old workers who were there. This craft had come down the night before, and the morning of, the foreman alerted these two 19-year-old workers that are in this carrot patch of all places. And what they described seeing, this is the from the dictation notes of Leonard Stringfield, a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, 4 feet tall. It had a flat section on top, and then these double row of what looked like indented windows. That's what the craft looked like. This is the original sketch from the report. Here is X marks the spot. So we could go here. Off to the left, you see Pacific Coast Highway. This is Highway 1. And then you see Highway 101. So it's just to the left of Highway 101. X marks the spot. I believe we can get within plus or minus a quarter mile of where this thing goes down. Now, since it happened in 1947 timeframe, I don't know what would be left, right? We're talking long time ago now, but you never know, right? So we took that information together. I put this SolidWorks rendering AutoCAD drawing together, and we came up with this. This is my first pass illustration of what this thing may have looked like. Here is Rudy's drawing of what this retrieval operation. Now, when these two 19-year-old workers got up to it, it took them about 5 minutes to gain up enough confidence being close to this thing. One of them walked up to it and kicked it with his boot. So, I mean, they actually kicked something solid. Within 5 minutes of that, this military convoy pulls up, orders these two 19-year-old boys to get out of the location completely, not to talk about this, but they were close enough to see this entire retrieval operation. They saw these MPs bring this craft onto the 18-wheeler tractor trailer, and then they saw the whole thing drive away. Now, we took this information from the sketch and came up with this full color rendering of what this may have looked like. So now we're looking at least 6-7 craft. We've got bodies involved. The more we get into this, you can see the number of bodies continues to increase. the craft continues to increase in number here.
Excuse me, Michael. I have I have a question later, if I may. We'll address about the bodies. Okay.
Go ahead. Yep.
But
No
later on. This is awesome. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. This is 1951. Prior to, so I'm thinking 1948 time frame, Sierra Madre Valley, Mexico, and this is a C-119. Now, in this case, it was the U.S. military that asked help from a highway construction engineer. And apparently they needed help. So they brought in the C-119 flying boxcar. This is somewhere around 1948 timeframe, page 32. And this was about a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. Now, how do we know what the diameter of the craft was? It's simple, okay? It took a little bit of work, but we figured it out. We know that because the interior wall width of the cargo bay of the aft section of the C-119 flying boxcar is 9 feet 10 inches wide. That means the craft cannot be any larger than 9 feet across. Basically, that allows you 5 inches of clearance on either side. So we're talking about a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. Now, when it came down, apparently there was some high heat, and the bodies inside, 3 bodies were recovered, were badly burned. It was a gruesome sight. And here is Rudy's drawing of what it looks like as they were hoisting this craft into the aft cargo bay of the C-119. We've got the clamshell doors opened up. And when this engineer construction worker, he came over to the bodies and he put his finger on their faces. The bodies were so badly burnt that the skin came off on his fingers. That's how gruesome this was. I'll save you the gruesome details here, but here's the full color rendering by Joseph Wraith. Did a good job. Shows you the retrieval operation. We've got the bodies in the foreground here, and then off to the right, you can see them basically pulling this on 2 ramps up into the aft cargo bay. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Now you can get a better look of what this may look like. And then shipped off to probably Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. All right, next one. This is 1950. This is a radar operator at Hangar 1. And this is Northern California area near the Bay Area. And this hangar still exists today. It is so large, repeat, so large, it has its own weather. That's how big this hangar is. Woo. So here you've got this radar operator. This is case B5, page 57. Somehow he walks through these double doors, and there's a guard there, but the guard didn't see him immediately. And when he looked inside this massive hangar, he saw something incredible. I'm going to move forward here. He saw a 80 to 100 foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It had a series of portholes wrapped around the lower portion of the dome. He was challenged by this MP, and I'm going to back up one to give you his statement. Now, this is from the primary eyewitness. What he said is, quote, "It was certainly no aircraft of ours." So he believes that it was not one of ours. This is one of theirs. Very interesting. Now, he later died in an airplane crash, and Leonard did contact some of his family members, and that's how we got this case. So in a nutshell, he did see something large in this massive hangar that you can still go in today if you had the right connections. Next one, page 212, 213. Classified Materials Library. This is at an unknown U.S. Air Force base. Even Leonard didn't know. And this is a former military officer. That is the primary eyewitness. Now, this gentleman had the correct security clearances to get access to this materials library. And he had a series of file drawers that were in this facility. He opened up one of the drawers, pulled out a manila folder, opened it up, and this had to do with crash retrievals. And when he looked at the information contained in this manila folder, and I'm going to move forward here, this is what it looked like. There was a report on crash retrievals. There was talk of bodies within the report, and then there was an 8x10 glossy black and white photograph of a craft that went down near Farmington, New Mexico prior to 1950. That was about 36 feet in diameter, and it had porthole windows wrapped around the upper section of the dome. And what I want to do now is go to some of the bullet items that were contained in this report here. Number one, Military officer had the correct security clearance, which gave him access to a classified materials library. Number 2, report seen by witness made reference to crashes. Okay, so more than one, and that bodies were recovered. Number 3, in addition, diamond-tipped drill bits and acetylene torches were used to gain access to the interior of the craft. Now, that's similar to the 46 case that we already talked about, and a case in December 1963. Number 4, this is important. Eventually, technicians were able to gain access to the interior of the craft by way of a small entry hatch. The report said, referring to the door, that it was almost as if the material of the craft liquefied and then solidified again. And that's what we're hearing, Jason, again and again, is that these entry hatchway doors that are on the bottom of these craft, they're so fully integrated into these craft that you could not put a razor blade in there. That's how tight these doors are. It's just incredible what we're dealing with here. Now, why is Farmington, New Mexico important? Because this is published in Albuquerque Journal, March 18th, 1950. So on the 17th of March, 1950, there was what's called the Farmington Armada. We had, Jason, 500 dish-shaped craft flying over Farmington, New Mexico. 1950, it's known as the Farmington Armada. Here it says, hundreds at Farmington report large force of flying saucers. These things were making these erratic movements. They can make 90-degree left-hand turns. They could back up. They can take off very quickly like a spark on a grinding wheel, like very, very unusual flight characteristics, all back in 1950, known as the Farmington Armada. Now that's important because in the early 1950s, the United States Air Force put a standing order on our pilots to shoot these things down. I mean, like they were desperate to get a hold of one of these things. So,
good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. Shoot saucers down. Jet pilots so ordered in 24-hour alert. And this went on again and again. Like they were desperate. So this is Cincinnati Enquirer, July 29th, 1952. I'm going to go ahead here. Jets keeping 24-hour alert for saucers. These are the headlines. Pilots ordered to down objects if they land. On the saucer trail, pilots told shoot them down. Jets on 24-hour alert to shoot down saucers. Okay, so what are the craft they're using? F-94 Starfire are the craft that they were using to try to intercept and shoot these things down during the early 1950s. So if you want to get a real close look at these, 2 places to go. Pima Air and Space Museum, that's Tucson, Arizona. And then Air Force Museum, Dayton, Ohio. They've got one there too. So if you go to the one in Pima, it has these rocket flaps closed. If you go to Dayton, Ohio, the rocket flaps are open. So if you look in the nose, you can see where these rockets are shooting out, trying to down these craft. Now, why is any of this important? Because here's the drawing of an attempted intercept at one of these things. It's important because they've got gun camera footage of one of these intercepts where, and I'm going to move the forward here. This is a letter to Leonard Stringfield by a woman named Mildred Bissell on October 2nd, 1979. It's very critical that we look at this. Here's what she said, and this is to Leonard. I heard you speak at the MUFON Symposium in Dayton last year, and I'm interested in your research on retrievals of the third kind. I gave a talk at a local library last week, and in the discussion period following, a fellow told me that when he was a gunner in the Air Force, he had emptied his guns on a UFO and had taken pictures with his gun camera that clearly showed the shells exploding against the side of the craft. I love this. He said the camera was taken off the wing of his plane when it landed, and the pictures developed. At 2 a.m., a couple of military policemen came and got him out of bed and took him to the base auditorium. They ran the 17 seconds of movie of the UFO over and over and questioned him and 2 other crew members until 10 a.m. He was warned never to tell anyone what had happened. He said he had a wife and family and a good job and a lot to lose. He seemed afraid of the CIA and wouldn't even give me his name. So here,
I believe that. Yeah. I believe that part.
We've got a very reliable source of a military pilot who emptied an entire magazines of shells on this thing. It hit the side of the craft. They got it all on gun camera footage, and then they confiscated the film. Here's the question. How many other times has this happened, starting in World War II and then going to the Korean conflict, going to Vietnam, Desert Storm, all the way up to the now? You know they've got hundreds of these gun camera, probably thousands of them.
Sure.
They've got the motion picture film reel. Where are the vaults where they're keeping this footage?
But Michael, if you just watch mainstream media, we got the Tic Tac UFO from Luis Elizondo, the clown CIA puppet. I mean, anyway, that's why you're here today. We're telling the real truth of what the hell's been going on.
Point being is, you know for a fact that there is multiple warehouses around this country where they've got pallets full of these motion picture film reel, 8x10 glossy black and white, 8x10 color photographs. They've got still imagery. They've got gun camera. I mean, it's there. It's there. There is no question about it. That's what the witnesses are telling us here. All right, Pentagon, 1952. This is an office worker. And she somehow got access to like this basement. There is absolutely a basement vault, a large room, a vault, a facility underground at the Pentagon. This is 1952.
I've been there. I got to disclose, Michael. I'm an open book at full disclosure. I've been there. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't.
Okay, good. You can tell us. All right. All right. So
no, I am not that. That's read
okay.
in. Sir, go ahead.
Page 152, case 1. So she goes through these double doors by accident. So it's in this dark, dusty room now. So it's poorly lit. It's probably musty. They've got some cardboard boxes there. And she kind of does this 180-degree turn in this off-limits room. What does she see, Jason? She sees a pickled alien in a large glass jar.
No.
That's what she sees. Yes, I kid you not. 5 seconds later, an MP from behind her grabs her arm, turns her around, and says, "Get out of there immediately." So she has to get out of there. She signs papers not to talk about this. Here's Joseph's drawing of illustration of what this may have looked like.
It's gnarly.
But Leonard did speak to her, and she said, "Nope, I'm not going to talk about it. I will not talk about it." He knew exactly the details that he wanted to get from her, but she wouldn't talk about it. All right, next one. Camp Polk, Louisiana, summer 1953. This is a good case. Private in the Army, case A1, page 80. That's the reference. So if you want to get more detailed information, got to go back to the book and pull up that page number. Okay, so I've got the map here, and I'm going to take you to where this thing. Now, the primary eyewitness saw the entire operation from beginning to end. He actually saw this egg-shaped craft come down. This thing was about 30 feet across, almost like the one from Berkeley. And it was still warm on the bottom soil here. It had red soil that was still warm. Now, there were four ET beings recovered, and they were about 3.5 feet tall. They had a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They had kind of a helmet. They were wearing what looked like mittens, Jason. And he also said, this is from the primary eyewitness, it looked like these ET beings did not have a knee joint. So they had this very strange stair-step type jaggedy movement when they were walking across the ground. Now, there were 2 MPs that were ushering 3 of these ETs out of the entryway hatchway door. Now, prior to, one of these ET beings was put on this stretcher, and he was carried off, and then the other 3 were like trying to communicate with their comrade. And so that's what this scene looked like. Now, let's go to the full color rendering by Joseph here. Now we got a good idea of what this thing actually looked like. You can see this burnt soil that was red in color. You've got this ambulance truck. And I want to zoom in and give you a little bit better idea. This is what they may have looked like, wearing this one-piece tight-fitting flight suit with this helmet on their heads. And we'll do another shot here showing you the other ET on the stretcher going into the aft end of the ambulance. And the other 3, it appeared that they were trying to communicate with the one on the stretcher. And we'll do a final blow up here. Gives you an idea of what this may have looked like if we were at this retrieval operation here. All right, next one. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1953. This is a really good one. Primary eyewitness was an Army reservist. He was a warrant officer. I know his name. This is one of these where we've got the guy's identity. This is page 15, abstract number 8. Now, this is at night at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. A 4-engine DC-7 cargo plane lands, taxis up onto the tarmac, and then this is at night. So let's move forward here. Hangar number 4 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I can't guarantee it was this hangar, but I believe it was this hangar complex. So picture this 4-engine military transport plane DC-7 taxis up onto the tarmac. I'm going to move forward here. This shows you a front view. I've actually been inside this hangar, and I believe it probably was the correct hangar complex. Right so on. Once the DC-7 parks, now keep in mind, this is inside the hangar now, just giving you an idea. An aft cargo bay on the port side of the DC-7 4-engine military transport, it opens up, and then there's a forklift. It starts offloading these wooden crates. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take you inside the hangar as we're unloading this DC-7. And Jason, here's what this guy saw. This is a warrant officer. He was standing not too far away from these crates, and he leaned over and looked inside. And what he saw were 3 bodies. They were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They had oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. Jason, they were all being suspended off the bottom of the wooden crates by this netting that protected their bodies from the dry ice freezer burn below. Now, he also noted that there were boxes around this entire aft end of the cargo bay of the aircraft. He got some minute details of that these crates came from the crash retrieval, where these bodies came from. Now, I don't know how long ago the craft took place, but he did get information on the retrieval operation. There were additional crates near the crates with the bodies, so that probably contained the debris from the craft itself. So let's put all the information together and let's go to the full color rendering, and here's what we came up with. This may be it's the best we could come up with of what this retrieval operation may have looked like. So we've got the cargo bay, we've got the wooden crates. Now, I would mention that he said that one of these beings was female because it had breasts. So that's something that we wanted to keep in mind for historical purposes. Now, let's get a top view looking down. Now we're looking down at these ET beings. So
the government does amazing genetic engineering, but some people will think that's ET from another star system. I don't think so, but we could talk about that later. This is amazing. Go on.
Sure. Okay, so that's what we've got here. The body count continues to rise here. Now, this is a bizarre case. It's in the book. This is page 19, abstract 11. Cecil Tenney, civilian. This is Dutton, Montana, 1953. So he's driving down the road in this pickup truck, and there's oncoming traffic, coming toward him. He looks up and he sees this 300-foot-long cigar-shaped craft tilted at a 45-degree angle, and then he notices that the tailpipes on the oncoming traffic, they're on fire, Jason. So let's go to the drawing here, okay?
Michael, excuse me, I was waiting for you to get to the cigar-shaped craft as well. Here we go. Awesome.
Here we go. 300 foot, and this is so good. I'm with you, Jason. I'm with you on this.
I know you are, brother.
Now, here's the thing. This thing was tipped up at a 45-degree angle. It's a 300-foot-long cigar-shaped craft. It had fire and smoke belching out of the bottom of it, like it was trying to keep itself up, and it had a hard time doing it. He saw this whole thing. Now, if you look at the traffic going away, all of their tailpipes were on fire, and like balls of fire were coming off the tailpipes of the car. Now, he sees all this. He goes another 2 miles down the road, and there's a bar. He walks in the bar. He talks to the bar owner, and he files a report, gets in his truck, and he goes home. All right. So 5 minutes later, a police officer goes into the same bar. He files a report, and he says, you know what? Some guy in a pickup truck just came here 5 minutes before you, and he filed a report. Well, the bar owner gave the name of the primary witness to the police officer. The police officer called the local base, and that night, the primary eyewitness got a call from this gruffy general. His exact words were, "I want to see you." So that's what we got on the upper right-hand blow-up view. The next morning, the primary witness goes to the base, which is Malmstrom Air Force Base. It later became Malmstrom Air Force Base. And this guy had to sign NDA agreements not to talk about this. Once he signed everything, he goes walking toward, he's ushered out of the base. And then he noticed that there's two MPs with these potato sacks over their shoulders. One guy trips, falls, and the potato sack kind of like falls out of his grip, and he noticed what it looked like. I'm going to describe it as described. He said it looked like human body parts inside this potato sack. Now, I can't prove they were human body parts. He can't prove they were human body. They could be ET, but who knows? I don't know. Maybe they weren't body parts at all, but that's what he said it looked like within these sacks. Now, where did this all take place? It took place at Great Falls Air Force Base. This is all in Montana, which later became Malmstrom Air Force Base, which had the nuclear incursion where 10 ICBMs went offline. This is back in 1967, so that's important.
I remember that.
Like that as well. Now, here is the newspaper clipping, Great Falls Tribune, September 20th, 2010. And here is Robert Salas. He was down inside the ICBM silo when this UFO hovered just outside the chain link fence, and there were multiple MPs that saw this while this is all going down. And at least 10 of our ICBMs went offline. Boeing was called in after this all went down. They went through this thing with a fine-tooth comb. They found nothing wrong with the missile silo. Something was going on. Something was taking these things. It was not an electrical glitch. This was an outside source that was going on exactly when this craft was hovering outside. And the same thing happened in the former Soviet Union. So we've got multiple independent confirmation of this going on. Now, what would this look like if we drew this up? Oh, I want to go back to this thing really quickly. It's not an isolated incident. So this is Sao Paulo, Argentina, December 7th, 1954. Almost the identical situation was going on there. Large cigar-shaped craft, tipped up at an angle, belching out fire and smoke. I got this from the Gray Barker collection, Clarksburg, West Virginia. Now, in this case, Jason, there was an iris that opened up on the bottom of the craft. 3 dish-shaped craft came out. One came out vertically downward. The other one flew off to the left, and then one flew off to the right. So it's not an independent case. This is 1954. Almost the identical situation took place. And here's our full color rendering here, what this looked like. All right, next one. Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico, April 12th, 1954. So Walker Air Force Base was 509th Bomb Group. So this used to be Roswell Army Airfield, same location as the 1947 incident. Primary witness served in the Air Force 1954 to 1955, and this is page 82. So what happened is this gentleman was called immediately to board a Sikorsky H-19 helicopter. He was a photographer. So he gets in this helicopter. This is at night, and this is the same model of helicopter. They take off. They fly north of Roswell about 35 miles. Then they make a left-hand turn. Now they're tracking northwest, and this is at night. And when they get to the scene, what does this photographer see? He sees a 50-foot diameter dish-shaped craft augured in at a 45-degree angle. It has lights wrapped around the outer circumference. There was a dome on the center top part of the craft. There was an entryway hatch that was open, and there were 4 ET bodies strewn out on the ground. Later, they found out that there were 2 more inside for a grand total of 6. And he is hovering in the helicopter above. They open up this cargo bay hatch, and now he's taking photographs with a still camera this entire operation. The helicopter lands next to the craft, and guess what happens next, Jason?
I can't guess. Tell me.
Can't guess?
Tell us.
Well, he gets out of the helicopter, and the very first thing he noticed is that the whole place smelled like battery acid, automobile battery acid. So it's a CE2 case for sure because it had physical effects. So that's something. Now, we don't hear too much about battery acid, but we do hear about brake liners. Like when these ET craft are in the vicinity of humans, it smells like an 18-wheeler slamming on the brakes and the brake pads burning up. That's what it smells like. And now in this case, it smelled like battery acid. So it's kind of
you don't always have to say ET craft though, right, Michael?
Yeah, well, And a lot of these craft, some of these are ours as well, absolutely. Now let's go to the full color rendering. This is what it may have looked like if we were there back in 1954, New Mexico. We'll go to the next case here. The other Roswell, spring 1955. And the source material is this book from Noe Torres and Ruben Uriarte, a good friend of mine. They did the legwork on this, and this is just south of the Texas-Mexican border, just south of the Rio Grande River. And I want to move forward here. This is the map. So you've got Del Rio, Texas, and if you go just south of the Rio Grande, that's where this thing came down. Now, I want to mention that there were 4 F-86 Sabres, and what they were doing is, and we'll go back one, they were escorting B-47s heading westbound over South Texas. And then a dish-shaped craft comes screaming by. I'll go back to the first slide, and crosses their flight path. One F-86 breaks away from the formation. He kind of does a low pass and sees the entire thing. He sees this thing auger in. He does a low pass. He gets the exact location where it took place. So he heads northbound. He lands at Carswell Air Force Base, gets out of the F-86. He drives to Corsica Airfield, gets into a 2-seat Aranca tail dragger, flies with a friend back to the crash site. And this is what I want to show you here. This thing was 25 feet in diameter. The dome had popped off. The Mexican military got there before the Americans did. Off to the left, there was a 6-by troop transport. And what he saw is that it left a debris trail. And since it was getting a little bit near evening time now, it was getting chilly. He mentioned that the military police were taking blankets out of the back of the truck, putting these blankets on the debris that was still hot, warming the blankets up, and then putting the blankets around their bodies to heat them up. He mentioned that was actually took place. Now what I want to do is, if you look off to the right side of the craft, there was a massive hull breach where there were 4 burnt bodies. And I'm going to do a blow up here to give you an idea of it was a gruesome sight. And this is from Air Force pilot Robert Willingham. He's the primary eyewitness. And he said that the, quote, arms on these beings look like broomsticks. Very interesting description. So let's go to the full color rendering now. Now you get a good idea of what this retrieval operation looked like here. Full color rendering. The top dome had popped off. Later, Americans got on the scene, and one of the deepest, darkest secrets within the United States government is, and it has to do with retrieved craft that the United States military plucks out from under the nose of the Mexican governments or any other foreign government. Some of our deepest black programs are where we take these from other governments. So at this point, what I want to do now is I want to zoom in to this hull breach so that you can see these bodies a little bit better. Now, there was a gruesome scene. They were burnt really bad, but he did say it had like arms like broomsticks. That's from the Air Force pilot who was there that got a real good close look at this here. All right, so Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1955. This has to do with Mrs. G, who worked in the Foreign Materials Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And this is page 17. Now, let's move forward here. This is kind of the environment that she worked in. This is the closing scene of Indiana Jones. So you've got all these pallets. You've got all these wooden crates that are stacked up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Here is Warehouse Building 258. Now, what she did was, and this is very critical, her job was to catalog 1,000 components from the interior of a crash retrieval. 1,000. Can you imagine this?
No.
So what we did is I said, okay, Rudy, you've got to give me this office worker in this building 258 warehouse operation. She's typing this up. So what they had done, and we'll go to the drawing here. Now you can see it. They had this thing kind of set up like an assembly line. So if you look in the background here, you've got a guy on a table with a still photograph camera. He's taking photograph of the debris. Then it moved to the next station where they bagged it and tagged it. And then they gave it to her and she cataloged it. At that point, they started populating the shelving with all these interior components from a crash retrieval. We're talking about 1,000 pieces here. So again, when we hear these senators and congressmen where they say, we don't have any physical evidence, well, we do, but they don't have access to it. They don't have access to it. Now, she also noticed this mobile dolly that was going past her. She saw that there were 2 ET beings that were kept in this preservation formaldehyde fluid. They were wearing kind of this one-piece tight-fitting flight suit, and this thing was rolling right by her. And the source who interviewed her got her just in time. She died 6 months later, but before she did, she made this final statement, which I want to highlight here. This is from the witness. Quote, "Uncle Sam can't do anything to me once I'm in my grave." 6 months later, she died. We got her just in time, Jason. She's an American patriot hero.
I agree.
Just in time, we got her. All right, next one. Retired Air Force pilot, late 1950s. This is by an interview conducted by Ed Camarack Jr., and he interviewed this Air Force pilot who claims that he had seen, this is from the Clifford Stone collection, a 5 to 6 minute film clip that depicted a large 60-foot diameter dish-shaped craft in a hangar. There were at least 3 bodies on the ground next to the hangar with blankets over their bodies. Then the movie cut to the interior. So here you can see whatever the engine was on this thing, the propulsion system, it had a hull breach on the upper dome where it popped out of the craft itself. And then the movie cut away to the interior, showing you iconology written on the inside wall. There were a series of display screens and buttons, and this is sometime in the late 1950s. So they've got these film clips of the retrieval operations as well. This is a blow-up of what this might have looked like on the interior of the craft itself. Okay, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is April 1962, and this had to do with a group of transient pilots that were walking down a row of hangars at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They were looking for a mobile racquetball court. They needed to find 2 other walls to complete this racquetball court. So we're going down the row of these hangars. One of these hangar doors was open up. They ran inside and they see this 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It's guarded by military MPs with carbides, and it's propped off the floor by 2 engine test stands. Now, the leader of the flight crew is challenged by one of these MPs, and I'm going to go to his statement here. This is what this guard says. The guard challenged by saying, "I don't think you're supposed to be here, sir." I applied to the affirmative, and we turned about face and departed, mumbling to ourselves that the good old U.S. had developed or had all along flying saucers in service. And I trust the judgment and the testimony of this Air Force pilot. I absolutely trust that he's telling the truth. This was another case in 1963 where a pilot who originally flew for Braniff Airlines, he was a captain in the Navy. He saw a dish-shaped craft 30 feet in diameter by accident at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So this is another case where these things are being seen. Now, we've got enough cases here to make it to the next ice age, Jason. So we can go as long as you want. It's your call. You're running the show here. But the point being is there's plenty of material to cover here.
No, that absolutely amazing so far, Michael. And I think the audience, obviously, they're going to have you've just blown so many people's minds when we get this video shared by a lot of people. My question would be, Michael, know my stance that I don't think you ever need an ET explanation. It would be wonderful. And it sounds amazing that a lot of these government officials and eyewitnesses have so-called seen ETs, as you describe, extraterrestrials, as we call them. But I don't think you need to go that far, personally. I mean, it's possible, but I think more likely the government, they can do amazing biological, probably humanoid experiments. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to explain. I mean, in your opinion, Michael, how do you rectify that in your mind about the ET part of it when you yourself, and this is why I always respected you as well, right, you focus on the nuts and bolts, and that you said yourself, we know the CIA have spun this for ET for over 65 years because it helps give them a little bit of plausible deniability, we're uncertain who's piloting them. It could be ET when it's our programs many times.
Well, very good case. I will concur with you. I am not saying that all of these retrieval operations are ET by no means. What I am saying is that there is a contingent of craft recovered. They're absolutely man-made. There's no doubt about it. And these people who are seeing these, maybe some lower level military personnel, they don't have a clue what's going on. They're not read into the program, so they might mistake something man-made for something ET. So point being, yes, we do have man-made craft being recovered. Now on the other side, if you go back to that 46 case, they were desperately trying to drill into the side of this thing. So that kind of stands to reason that if it was one of ours, why would they be trying to get into it? So it just lends a little bit more credibility that perhaps some of these are not ours. There's a mixture here. A large percentage of these could be ours, but there appears to be a percentage where they're not ours.
And if it's not ours, again, my research, I think if you go back to the ancient civilizations, as other researchers have talked about at times, they had technology, as you know, Michael. They flew above the heavens. We got the India Sanskrit text with the Brahmana. That's another discussion, but I think that could be, who knows, that could be part of it. But I don't think to say that, you got ET from another star system coming to Earth. Right. It's amazing to think, but I think I always say let our cosmologists and astronomers do their job, and we've got to be very careful with the ET narrative, because I think Michael, the next op, and Dark Journalist, I'll give him credit, he did say this. If you think the COVID-19 op was hardcore, wait till you see the fake alien threat op. Well, but it's not gonna be aliens. It's gonna be our craft. They're gonna be USOs, unsubmergible objects coming out of the oceans, I predict. It's going to be off the Florida coast. You don't even have to look in space on this op, and it'll be very fascinating to see how they're going to try to pull this one off.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, because right now they can design, build, test flight, and they've already done this, craft that mimic the form, fit, and function of quote-unquote ET craft, and you'd never be able to know the difference. It will look 100% believable. And if you factor in the holographic image projection technology with actual hardware craft, it will be so believable that people will willfully give up their civil liberties and freedoms to protect themselves from a threat narrative from this false flag alien. Yeah, so that does sound consistent. That does appear to be something that we're looking forward in the future, but we want to get ahead of it by looking at these cases, and we can kind of gauge the man-made components of these, because when you see rivets and you see seams and you see test flights on Thursday nights and you hear a low frequency electrical humming noise associated with these craft, now you know that they're ours.
Yes, thank you. And
yep.
What was I going to say? Oh, just on the secrecy part of it, Michael, and I might have my own contacts, but not as much as you over the years, of course, Michael, but let's just say I have some military friends, and I really respect, especially our Canadian military. I'm in Canada. You're in the United States. I respect your U.S. amazing military as well. My point is, as you know, I'm sure, that you have classified projects. I want the audience to know this, but they're a cover for much more highly classified projects, which are called unacknowledged special access projects. And if you even divulge the existence of that program, or say what you work on, you will be jailed 30 years or more, and or killed. It's so compartmentalized, and within the aerospace part of it, which you specialize, Michael,
right?
They work in silos, and you'll have a colonel sitting on top of you watching. If I have a question, I want to ask you a question, Michael, I'm going to walk up to you. I'll ask you a question. You'll write it down, but both of us may not even know what we're working on. And this is going on even apparently with a company here in Canada, a big corporation, I should say. A friend of mine was just telling me they're very compartmentalized as well, and it has to do with their work on robots and some AI. So that's why we don't get a lot of truth out. But this is why, again, we really appreciate you, Michael, and me especially, digging in to share your amazing knowledge on these subjects. And again, what could be more important than the UFO file? This is free energy, which you study too, the non-reactionary free energy generation propulsion systems. We get into that if you want.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Jason, because that is the heart of the cover-up. Not that ETs are here. It is the propulsion system and new energy systems that you can gain by reverse engineering the propulsion systems of these vehicles. That's at the heart of the cover-up, because if they are able to exploit the technology, that means that the coal-fired plants could go out of business.
Exactly. So my question to you, Michael, is to the audience tonight, why is Elon Musk, the picture's gone, right here. Let me just press play again. One second. Why is he using dinosaur technology, as you've described, when it comes to rockets? What the hell's going on? He's a government front man. That's why my answer. What do you think about that?
Well, that could be true, or he plain has not been read in on the technology. We've got the case from 1966 with Eddie Laxon, who saw one of these craft depart like a spark on a grinding wheel. It had the designation TL4768 written on the side of the craft. There was a man who crawled up an air stair and shut the door. That happened in 1966. This is before Apollo 11. So why are we still using obsolete liquid and solid rocket boosters? That's the question. We've already got the technology. We've already got the technology.
Exactly. They're stealing billions and billions of dollars every year. Again, our military, most of the soldiers are awesome, of course. We're talking about a very small group, call it the establishment, whatever, that are stealing money, and they're going off-world. We got a multi-planetary civilization. We could talk about that another night. On the one side of Mars, you know what's going on the far side of the moon. Anybody who researches, we got domes all over the far side of the moon. We got UFOs you could see on the far side of the moon. We got the TR-3B strata that comes out of the Aurora space program. You know, Lockheed Martin has a huge monopoly on a lot of these projects, and they're even in the skies on Mars. So we deserve, this is why I so respect you, Michael. We deserve truth and transparency on this, and you provide it like nobody else. And this is just
passion. Awesome. I love your passion. I can see it in your eyes.
I know you can. I love your passion too, buddy. And Elon Musk, by the way, one more thing about this scumbag, and Dr. Shiva calls him every name in the book. Again, Tesla would only be profitable starting 2021 because this guy's behind the carbon tax credits and he's making an enormous amount of money. But you're right, he's not read in the programs. Most likely he's not. But you know, he's got the Starlink satellites up. He knows a lot more of the UFO file than the average person. You have to, when you're connected to the government, I would argue, in releasing rockets, but maybe you disagree with me on that.
Well, all I'm going to say is the Tesla vehicle that Elon Musk is building and producing and selling, that's not what Tesla had in mind. Nikola Tesla did not have this concept of plugging something into your outlet wall and letting it charge over. That's not what he had in mind. What he had in mind is free electrical energy being transported without wires that anyone could tap into. So you wouldn't need to plug your car into a wall. This one you'd be taking it from the atmosphere, not something you'd be tied down to the wall with. So he's completely missing the concept of what Nikola Tesla had originally envisioned.
Thank you for that, Michael. You see the picture behind me, big guy?
Yeah.
What is that?
It looks like a fiery phoenix, or it looks like a Star Trek insignia.
Well, that's one way to describe it. As the photo says and depicts, it's a very famous photo. Numerous photos of the cigar-shaped craft, thank you, that you showed so expertly with your amazing artists. It says, infrared photograph of one of the gigantic cylindrical objects taken by Hubble in the rings of Saturn. And here's the ET spin, Michael.
Okay.
Norman, I hope I don't get his name wrong. I believe it's Norman Berggren, who wrote a book. Oh, good. I'm glad I got him right. Thank you. You know, he wrote a book on the rings of Saturn, I think it was called.
Ringmakers of Saturn.
Thank you. Ringmakers of Saturn. But he spun it for ET, this sellout. And I know, and you know, it's the Navy, baby. And we've discussed this before because the Navy is in charge largely of the UFO file the last several decades. You see it on the military patches now. Naval Space Command. And I said to you, Michael, and you're going to add the qualifier, the Atomic Commission. The Navy's in charge of the UFO file from what I've seen because they're all about building a fleet of craft. And we got under ocean bases, as you know, worldwide. Catherine Austin Fitz says, if you look at the mining stocks the last 50 years, they're not mining gold, silver, base metals, right? These are under ocean facilities. That's where the massive cigar-shaped craft come out at nighttime, so you don't see those. But we've seen USOs and UFOs go in the oceans. Can you mention the Atomic Commission, if you'd like, Michael, on that part of it?
Well, I would definitely agree with you when you talk about those two organizations working hand in hand. Absolutely, the United States Navy is involved. Now, they are in conjunction with the Atomic Energy Commission. And when you put these two groups together, now you know who is essentially running the show behind the scenes. It's not the Air Force, U.S. Navy Atomic Energy Commission.
Right on. Thank you. That's fascinating. There is an op coming because, we see it on corporate media all the time. UFO threat, baby. And they've created the Defense Authorization, I forget, it's some office for UFO, right? Because they want UFO dough. Because, $1 trillion or more, we know goes, the Democrats, Republicans sign off every year in your beautiful country to the military-industrial complex, over $1 trillion with no questions asked since 9/11, and we're not even in a war. So, and you know the military's getting a bang for their buck, as we show. Do not doubt these amazing crafts that have been seen by, again, millions of people worldwide. Thank you for giving this amazing history lesson tonight, Michael. I hope we can talk more about history and bringing it up to today like that. That's an amazing presentation. Awesome.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. Great to be with you.
You too, buddy. And I can't wait to come to California, as we've talked about, to meet you one day, buddy.
Great. We'll do it sometime. It'd be great.
Awesome. There's a lot more I want to talk about, but we could save it for another video if you want, if you don't mind.
We can do another segment anytime. That's fine.
Good. Hugh, do you have any questions out there?
Oh, can't hear him.
Oh, 1 sec. Go ahead, Hugh. We can hear you now, I think.
Yeah, Michael, just curious, what percentage of your PowerPoint did you get through?
I would say probably 25%.
That's it. Okay, well, we better get you back.
Yeah.
So, Jason, maybe we can arrange to get Michael back, and then we'll go.
I would love to, man. I'd be honored, and I'm sure our audience would feel privileged and honored for you to come back, Michael, because you're an amazing guy.
Love to do it. Love to do it. No problem.
Thank you for your hardcore research.
Yep.
And again, providing truth and transparency. And again, I want to repeat, thank you for your stellar public dedication, extolling efforts in helping humanity. And we will get the truth on these free energy generation propulsion systems. I mean, we got, as you know, Russia space programs are massive. China, India's going to the moon. Well, we've been on the moon, the United States and Russia, I would argue, for decades. Again, the evidence is overwhelming. And I'd love to get into that with you, too, in the future, Michael.
Great. Yep.
Right.
Thank you, Jason. Great to be with you.
You're welcome. Thank you, buddy. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Hugh.
Okay, good night.
Thanks.
Have a great night. Bye, everybody.